Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Backlog Crew. My name is Ryder, and I will be hosting today's discussion of Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus. We are collectively known as Press A to Talk. Like I said, my name is Ryder, and we also have Kurt with us today, John, and I want to introduce a new addition, I guess,
Otacon.
Joseph.
Yep.
Yes,
That's me.
Otacon.
I'm Otacon.
Sometimes we call him Joe or Broseph or Sir Sandor Clegane, the mountain who rides.
Joe,
So,
have you watched that episode yet
Of
of the Metal Gear Solid backlog?
I watched like the first 15 minutes of the first video about an hour ago.
Okay.
So no.
So no, wait till you get to episode 2. It's gonna all make sense. Anyway, sorry, Ryder, go ahead.
no, you're good. So, like I said, today we're actually going to be discussing the roughly first half of Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus. If anyone wants to play along with us, you might want to stop the video right here. We'll be discussing some spoilers. The game is not extremely narrative heavy, so that's not really a concern, but we will be discussing the game, though, up through the end of the chapter called Sunset Snake Eyes. So if you want to stop, now's a good time to do so. If you're still here with us, let's keep going. This game is one of my personal favorites from my childhood. I remember playing this game as well as subsequent sequels and loving them. I haven't touched it in probably 15 years or so, though. So this is really not a new experience for me, but I'm seeing it through the eyes of an adult for the first time. So this is more or less a new experience at this point, just because it has been so long. Has anyone else played this game before? Have any experience with the series at all?
I saw a commercial for like the third game at my grandmother's house when I was like 11, and I thought this looks amazing. So I'm excited to finally be trying it, but no, I've never played it before.
I played as Sly a little bit in PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale.
Same thing.
Yeah, pretty much.
Basically the same thing. That's basically Kurt when we did our Metal Gear Solid series. He was like, "Yes, I know this character because Smash."
Yeah.
So you're on the exact same level right now. How about you, John?
I have never played Crash Bandicoot's cousin Sly Cooper.
Okay. Well, on that subject, for those of you who don't know anything about this game, have no intention of playing it, whatever it may be, I'll give you a bit of a background. This game came out in 2002. This is the first game in the series. Like I said, it's called Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus.
They added the subtitle, right? Whenever they did like the re-release on PS3. Sorry, that's not super important.
So.
But I think the first one was just called Sly Cooper, but
I'm pretty sure I have a box at my house from the original release that still says "and the Thievius Raccoonus" on it.
okay.
I might be misremembering that. But this is the first game, Sly Cooper for short, Sly Cooper and Thievius Raccoonus. Either way, like I said, this game released in 2002. I'm hesitant to call it a cult classic, but it released and completely underperformed at the time. So a lot of people just didn't play it or really never heard of it. And if you're kind of wondering why this game went under the radar, within a year of this game releasing, there's also just PlayStation exclusives. Jak and Daxter, Ratchet and Clank, Dark Cloud, Eco, Kingdom Hearts, and a little-known game called Final Fantasy X. Again, this is all within a year of Sly Cooper's release.
This came out the same year as Kingdom Hearts. Wait, when did the PS2 come out?
2001, 2002, something like that. This game came out in 2002. So all the games I just named came out between 2001 and 2002. So this game only sold about 400,000 units its first year. It was actually almost considered a failure, and the only reason why it really survived is because PlayStation did their it wasn't called PlayStation Classics at the time, but they added it to their essential library and released the game the next year for a cheaper price. At that point, it ended up selling ridiculous amounts of copies, made the company plenty of money, and they ended up making 2 sequels to complete a trilogy and then a soft reboot around 2013. So at this point, I think it's fair enough to say the series did extremely well. That kind of brings us to today, where we are now playing this game for our Backlog Crew series. Before we get too deep into the game itself, though, just wanted to ask general thoughts from everyone. It can be from gameplay, art, whatever you're thinking. Just how did you feel about this roughly first half? And we'll start with John since he went last earlier.
All right, yeah, so I can elaborate on my previous comment. So I've never heard of this game before. This is the first time I ever played it, and so its flow of movements and gameplay design kind of reminded me of Crash Bandicoot, which is why I called it Crash Bandicoot's cousin there. But overall, I thought the levels were pretty well designed, and I think I had some controller issues actually because some of my inputs weren't getting caught in time. But later on into my gameplay, I realized that mistake, and I had a more easy time with it than the beginning because I was a little bit frustrated at the beginning, but that wasn't the game's issue. That was more on my end. So overall, I thought it was a great experience and a great introduction into the series, and I feel like it's kept up with the amount of time that's passed since its release.
So, were you playing this game on on PlayStation Now or an official PlayStation 2
Official
through your
PlayStation
computer?
2. Yeah,
Okay. So,
official PlayStation 2 with my PlayStation 4 controller.
gotcha. Now that makes sense. Um, I personally played it with PlayStation Now. I didn't really have too many issues. I don't want to go too far into my take or anything, but I think my biggest issue is just the occasional frame rate drop or lag. Those really due to internet speed more than anything.
Yeah, I'm playing on PlayStation now as well, and there's like occasional like screen tear and frame drop, but it's really been solid so far. And also, it's just constant dopamine hit after dopamine hit because you get a trophy for taking every single step in that version of the game. It's amazing.
Yeah. So, Kurt, you can keep on going with your kind of feelings on
Yeah.
this at the moment.
Well, like I was saying, dopamine hit, man. But like as far as the actual game's concerned, I'm really enjoying it. I Not to dig too deep into like the mechanical side of things, but the actual physical platforming feels a little dated in the same way that something like Mario 64 does. Obviously, still a great game that still holds up in a lot of ways, but it doesn't feel as good to play as it probably did back when it released. But as far as like the characters and the level design, the art direction in general, the music, everything's like really popping out and it all feels really solid. And I'm really enjoying it. Looking forward to finishing this so I can go back and play the rest of it.
Cool. Joseph, how about you?
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. I mean, it's a 3D platformer, but it is a little bit dated in the sense that like I would have really enjoyed the game if I was like 10 or 11 and I played it when it actually came out, but I still enjoy 3D platformers, so I'm still enjoying it. I enjoy like the way the gameplay flows. I enjoy all the collectibles that you can just run around and grab, and I enjoy unlocking things as you collect more things. But I mean, overall, I'm enjoying it. I'm having a good time. I'm like bopping my head to the music and I'm loving all the level design and the bosses and the enemies and everything. And it's just fun to play.
Okay. I think all three of you hit on certain things to kind of wrap up my experience. I'm the only person in the group who's actually played the series before. And going into it, I was extremely excited and extremely anxious. Just like, reading a book that you haven't read since you're a child or watching that favorite movie of yours you had on VHS tape, or again, playing a game that you haven't played in 15, 20 years. It's kind of scary because I was really worried that I'd play it and that nostalgia would maybe not come back the same way, or things would feel off, or maybe it'd be a bad game. I can say that I've been pleasantly surprised. I have thoroughly enjoyed probably every minute of it. Even when I was getting frustrated, maybe at a boss fight or something, it wasn't because the boss fight was unfair or mechanics weren't explained to me. It was usually because I was just being stupid, whether it be getting greedy or something else. As far as, again, don't want to go too far into this, but the gameplay, I feel similar to Kurt on this. Some of it does feel dated, but at this point, it's a 19-year-old game, so that's to be expected. And I can say with some certainty, I played the 2013 soft reboot, Sly Cooper, Thieves in Time, and it's so refined. The controls and the platforming is much, much better, which can be expected. This was the first game in the series. Just ignoring the fact that it's 20 years old at this point, the first game in a new platforming series is probably going to have its iffy spots.
Especially a game that's in a genre that's still very young, considering, Mario 64, the first 3D platformer, had only been out for, less than 5 years at that point, something like that, Joe.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think you're right.
So
Yeah,
everything about that just
5 years.
learning process.
And that's another thing. It's so crazy because the graphical jump between the previous generation and PlayStation 2, PS1 to PS2, or N64 to the GameCube era, it's so significant that a lot of times I'm playing this game with the knowledge that this is a 19-year-old game. And some of the faces and animations aren't perfect, but it feels so much newer compared to something, again, like Metal Gear Solid that we just finished playing, or Mario 64. And there's a few years there, but a 6-year gap from 2021 to 2015 isn't nearly as significant as it was between 2002 and 1996 or 1997, with both the technical side of it, gameplay, and the just bare bones graphics, looking at performance issues, other things like that. But backing away from that, I want to go into the actual meat of the game. So just to kind of give you guys a synopsis, those who haven't, again, played this game, don't know what they're getting into. You're playing the game as Sly Cooper, who is, at this point, not a master thief. He comes from a long line of raccoons who are master thieves and who kind of collectively pass their knowledge down Assassin's Creed style through a book called the Thievius Raccoonus, instead of the Animus, going back in time and living through your ancestor's body. We're instead reading a book that explains how our ancestors, who are master thieves, did certain things.
Thank you for using the Assassin's Creed analogy so that we all understood the concept of the book.
No problem. So moving from the more bare bones part of that, more or less what happens is Sly as a kid, his family only steals from other thieves. They're good thieves. On this topic, it's kind of funny. There's a couple of flashbacks showing his ancestors and who they're stealing from. And at one point, his grandfather, living out in the Western United States, is stealing from a bank, just a plain bank, but they only steal from thieves. So it's saying like, hey, the bank, they're the bad guys here.
Mm-hmm.
It's just kind of funny. But keeping going with that, Sly Cooper, since his family, they only steal from thieves, that's obviously going to draw the attention from thieves, other criminals. So they come in, do some whack stuff, kill Sly's family, and they throw his butt in a orphanage. And they obviously have never read like any literature, any historical epics or anything like that, because you have to kill every child or they're going to have a vendetta. And that's exactly what we have here. So of course, Sly meets his friends Bentley the turtle and Murray the hippo. They grow up together and end up vowing vengeance against the Fiendish Five, who are the criminals who have taken Sly's family tome, family book, the Thievius Raccoonus. And that's where our game starts, in Paris. This is really our tutorial level. Really explains the basics of, just platforming, combat as well, and stealth. Does anyone really want to take over this section, kind of what they thought about it as far as the perspective of tutorial level, or just maybe first impressions of the gameplay itself?
So I immediately, just like I do with any 3D platformer, was like, okay, what do all my buttons do? And then I was like, all right, X is jump, B is swing my cane sword, and sorry, I said B. I don't know why I said B. Square. I don't know, that was weird. And then I was like, all right, move, and that's all I can do. All right, cool, nice and simple. I respect nice and simple. And I started walking up the path forward, and you get to like a water tower that you have to like sidle around. And there's like these glowing blue sparkles around it. I was like, oh, that denotes that I can interact with it. But before I can actually get to it, I get like a phone call from the turtle, Bentley, and he's just like screaming. He's like, if you press circle, you can interact with glow. And I'm just like, yes. I understand. But I mean, I guess if I was a kid, I'd probably be like, what do here? But but that was funny.
But the most important part about that is we learned that every raccoon has this sense of where they can be sneaky, and I kind of laughed at that because it was pretty funny.
Yeah, I haven't
So-
taken like much biology, but I think that's accurate to raccoons.
Yes,
Yeah, they settle around water towers.
Yeah, so around the maps, you'll see these blue sparkles that are denoting where you can be more stealthy and put on your sneaking suit and maneuver your way around more stealthily than normal. So that's what we're referring to on that.
So, and before we go into any further with that, I just want to touch on, it's so simple, but it's so wonderful and just makes me giddy even as an adult. The idea that Sly Cooper is a master thief and a lot of master thieves. And what is the animal they chose to portray him? It's a raccoon. And he doesn't even have to wear a mask. You know,
I was going to ask.
Trash
He's
panda.
not wearing a mask? Because I know raccoons have like the face thing, but it really looks like a mask. And so I'm very concerned about it.
I think he does have a like Zorro like mask.
Yeah, that's what I'm
across his
saying.
face, but it's kind of funny because of course if he takes it off, he's still going to have
he's hiding his identity.
Under my mask is another
You wouldn't
mask.
know he's a raccoon.
But I love it so much. And of course we have Bentley, who's a turtle. I guess this is a part of history. Typically you think of owls as being wise, but I guess, you know, Bentley's the smarty turtle guy.
He's a know-it-all.
Yeah, okay, true. Master Oogway.
Yeah,
So
there you go.
Yes,
And
but this
Crash
turtle's a know-it-all.
Nemo.
He's not just smart. He's a
Yeah,
know-it-all.
exactly.
he is a know-it-all. So continuing with this, Bentley comes over the radio, like Kurt says, and he kind of screams his instructions. Hey, Sly, you need to do this. And it's funny and like over the top. But this is my only complaint for the moment, is it happens so much, and it's a children's game. So, I mean, I understand, they're going to explain it. And, this is a tutorial section, so it happens a lot in the tutorial section, but really there's tutorials throughout the game, and I don't really mind it as much for the story part. There's a lot of points where it stops and, Sly snatches out his binoculars, which doubles as his communicator. You talk to Bentley through that. And it never really bothered me at any point, but there's sometimes where I was trying to play the game, desperately trying to move on to the next area. And, it might be a minute and a half has passed. And then there's, hey, Sly. And at that point, I was like, oh my goodness, please stop, Bentley. But again, this is a children's game, so I'm not going to say it's over explaining, but they're very, very careful telling you, this is what you have to do. Go do it, Sly. You had.
I was gonna say that, that it was getting on my nerves, but then I was like, well, they're introducing new concepts that I probably would have been able to figure out, but it's good that I guess they're explicitly stating it. But then, you get to the second level and they're like, all right, here's this thing you've encountered before, here's how you do it. And it's like, I know, Bentley, I know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's say, which is, again, it's important considering it is a children's game, because it reminds someone like me as a kid who might play the game and then drop it for 2 or 3 weeks just because, I'm a kid and I get busy doing other things. Then I come back and it says, hey, Sly, this is how you do it. And, again, it's great for that. But for people like us who might or might not have binged 4 hours of a game in one sitting, it's a little repetitive. Never. But taking in this, again, tutorial as a whole, anyone else have any thoughts on it? Just again, kind of wide overview level.
I didn't expect Joe's Halloween costume from last year to attack us.
Was he a Tanuki last year, or not?
No, he was a
Tanuki,
fox.
but
A fox.
Yeah.
Were you a fox?
Yeah, it was.
What's her name? Officer
Carmelita Fox.
Yeah. That was a choice with that character. They made a decision with that character and they like leaned into it.
They stuck to it. I'm so ignoring. Let's rewind. So what Kurt's referring to is we show up this tutorial level starts on the rooftops of Paris, France. What we're trying to do is steal a police file on members of the Fiendish Five, the people that killed Sly's family and took his book, the Thievius Raccoonus, from a Interpol, I guess, officer, Carmelita Fox. She's working here in Paris, has an office here. So we're trying to break into her office. This is really the first taste of the game's stealth mechanics. So not extremely deep, but they're extremely fun, at least to me. They're kind of arcadey, one and done type of deal. You mess it once, it's over. Metal Gear Solid, we just finished playing. You're allowed to kind of spam, your gun and shoot someone. You can kind of run away and avoid it. But in this game, you're not allowed to you don't have a cooldown timer on stealth. If you mess up once and then get seen again, you die. And it's kind of fun. It's a nice way to change it up. It's not extremely hard, but it does add another layer of risk on top because you don't want to have to go back to that last checkpoint if you mess up. We go through this area, we end up stealing the police file, and we end up meeting Carmelita. Carmelita Fox is a fox, and she's a very foxy fox. Her character design is very much feminine, and ignoring their choices to make her, kind of over the top and busty. Her banter between Sly, the banter between Sly and Carmelita is something that I personally really enjoyed. I don't know how everyone else felt about it. We talked about, again, referring back to our Metal Gear Solid discussion, there are a lot of points where I was like, yeah, this is definitely written by men. It's cringy and like misogynistic. There was no real point in this where I felt like you probably shouldn't talk to anyone like that. And it's really demeaning. It was more like, I don't want to say Indiana Jones, but it was more subtle.
They're cartoon characters.
And it was
more back and
reciprocated,
forth,
I felt
subtle.
like.
Yeah.
Exactly. It was flirty, but never demeaning. And
I don't know that I would
actually
use Indiana Jones as the example of flirty, but not demeaning, personally.
That's why I said, never mind. I rolled back that.
Okay.
I was thinking something Harrison Ford, but even like Han Solo doesn't necessarily work at times. So
Just a nice banter between the two.
Yeah, nice banner. What did everyone think about this escape across the rooftops and fire escape?
I always start. Please, Joseph.
I really enjoyed how they just like kind of jumped you into introducing all the different characters together instead of playing a character that meets people along the way. It just jumps you into, you already have the friends like Bentley, and you just like kind of jump into seeing the interaction and the banter between Carmelita and Sly. But I don't know, I thought it was a fine tutorial level, despite being interrupted all the time by Bentley. There are definitely a lot of times, especially throughout the rest of what we played, where I was just like spamming all the buttons on my controller trying to skip through his dialogue. Because it's like, I get it. I need to go that way. I need to do that thing. It makes sense.
So I completely, I agree with that. I think you really hit the nail on the head, something that I hadn't thought about. They don't waste any time introducing you. And they also they're very straightforward characters. So you have Bentley, smart guy turtle, who kind of knows everything, is going to tell you where to go. Sly, of course, is our protagonist, goofy and really forward guy. We have Murray, who's the dumb hippo. He's also the getaway driver. The full-time burden.
Okay.
Yeah.
And,
I thought that was mean, but it's very, very true.
Yeah, it's funny the way they carry it out. And then we have Carmelita Fox, who's going to be our antagonist, but not the bad guy. She's going to be the one person that's kind of hunting us along the way. And she's not a bad person. She's just doing her job.
A lot of National Treasure vibes.
Great movie.
See, I haven't seen those movies in too long, so I can't even contribute to this discussion.
You should.
Lucky main character and
we should
nerdy
watch
computer character.
I might go watch them sometime. But on the subject of Sly Cooper and not Nicolas Cage,
wait, go back.
John, what did you think about this little escape portion of the mission? Or, again, Carmelita's introduction, anything from that point towards the end of the level?
Okay, so after her introduction, if I'm not mistaken, doesn't she try to run around and shoot you as you're progressing through the level? Is that accurate?
Mhm.
Okay, just making sure. Yeah, so that first level, I just thought it was great introduction to the different mechanics that'll be coming our way later on. So understanding, how quickly they're going to be firing at you, and just getting an understanding of that, so you can work out the timings for later, and then just trying to understand the level design. So you'll be changing directions and then going vertical and downward and all these other directions, and it'll swap a lot on you. But it's nice to see the different layouts that they've come up with for these levels, even though they are small levels. Just all the different directions they have you going in definitely makes it feel a lot bigger than these levels are. So I thought that was a unique design choice that really worked out in their favor.
Yeah, that's something that's like consistent throughout all the levels. They're very full. Like they're pretty linear for the most part, but in any one like given direction, there are several things you can interact with, including mattresses which bounce. And someone, when we finish recording, can someone explain that to me? Because I think I'm using my mattress wrong.
Magic.
It's like the no more monkeys jumping on the bed except for your raccoon.
It's a thief
Don't
skill.
Don't they like die though? I don't think we should be doing this.
Yeah.
For
I agree,
Sly's
it's a
for
thief
Sly's
skill.
safety, we should just turn ourselves in.
It's a
I thought-
thief skill for
I
sure.
thought they
Thief
just
skill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
they just
Joe
fell
had
off
it
and
right.
bumped their head.
We're gonna stop Kurt because he's being a Bentley right now.
What does that mean? I'm not being helpful at all.
You're worried about Sly's health, and he is a
Oh,
very
yeah.
capable raccoon. So
Oh,
Strong, independent raccoon man.
are you saying you're being the hippo if you're not being helpful?
yes.
He's helpful, but in the
Everyone
way
needs a
that
getaway.
a child who's like, "Can I help cook dinner?" is helpful. That's the way that like, what's his name, Murray? That's the way he's
Murray.
helpful.
Oh, so he's like an intern. Got it.
Like when you hand your little brother a second controller, but it's not plugged in.
Exactly.
I think he's more like a Jar Jar Binks, where
Yes.
by all means the things he's doing shouldn't work, but somehow like the mass chaos ends up turning into something good, and we'll get to that later.
I can't jump ahead to make a comment about Murray.
No.
You can make a comment about Murray. I'll let that happen.
I disagree completely that he's a Jar Jar Binks character, because Jar Jar Binks would use luck, like his own luck, to make everything be okay and solve all his problems through pure luck.
That's a good point.
Murray has all his problems solved for him by the other two members of this group. He's running out there about to get killed, and then Sly's like, "All right, I'll take care of this. Don't worry about it." You know?
True. He has a
That's
skill,
75% true.
but
He knows how to drive.
yes. So continuing with this, so we finish our confrontation with Carmelita. We drive away. They give us time for the game to kind of regroup and see who the next target's going to be, their first target rather. Reading through this case file that we stole from Carmelita, we find out that Raleigh the Bullfrog is going to be our first target. And he is hiding out in the Welsh Triangle, because that is a thing. And I absolutely love that that's a thing. The Bermuda Triangle is too much of a known staple amongst, I guess,
Everyone.
fiction.
Overused.
Yeah. So the game was like, you know what? The Welsh Triangle. And he's a pirate, so that kind of works in as well. So I guess let's just hit this dead on. This is the first time we see a title screen for The Tide of Terror is the name of this chapter. Really beautiful cartoony drawing, as well as, font. And it's something that really reminds me of Saturday morning, like cartoons almost. And this whole game has this really cartoony feel. And I think it's fine that we talk about it now, because we've already seen some cutscenes at this point. And they're animated really like comic books almost, because a lot of the frames are kind of frozen with some like slow moving animation and stuff. But it really feels like a cartoon to me, and in the most wonderful way possible. I was actually reading about it, and the director of the game described the style that they rendered the game with as toon shading, which I think is very poignant name for the style that we see here. Does anyone want to discuss kind of their thoughts on kind of the art style, or maybe, you know, if they think it looks cartoony in a good way or not?
I only had really one comment. Compared to our last game, this looks like 4K, so I thought it looked great.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
This art style looks like it's more built to last, especially with all
Yeah.
like the thick outlines on the characters.
Mm-hmm.
It's not quite like Okami level thick outlines, but they're enough to make you notice them, and it feels more like you're reading a comic book or watching a cartoon or something like that. And it really makes it not look quite as dated, even though you can clearly tell there is still like the graphics aren't, you know, they're early PS2 level, so it's still going to be choppy around the edges, but it doesn't stand out as much because of the art style.
Yeah, and I think the character designs are also really strong. Like, I love Sly Cooper's character design, but it's really funny because I don't know if this is just like a model versus concept art difference in the first game, or if they just updated his design over time. But the actual model that we're playing as is a lot stumpier than the character art might have you portray, and his eyes are like really big. So every time I'm playing as him, I'm like, this is great, and then he'll like turn and like look at the player, and his eyes are like, and I'm like, oh! It's really funny. That's like one visual thing that I feel like is kind of like, oh, that didn't hold up great, but
I get that. I think it's more of a translation difference, you know, between art styles. You know, speaking on the subject, kind of what Joseph was saying about it holding up, I completely agree with that. Again, this game is 18, 19 years old. Of course, I think Kurt's playing this, and Joseph's also playing this all on PlayStation now. So this is a
I am not.
upscale. Oh, or you're not? Okay, well,
you're playing it
Kurt
on
and I
my
are playing this on an upscale.
PS2.
Gotcha. So
Yeah,
Joseph
1080p.
and John are playing it on a PS2, and they're seeing it in its original format. And if it's still holding up for them, that's, you know, even better. That was kind of not the necessarily intended goal that the director stated, but the whole idea of doing this toon shading that he was saying is so that the game really pops and it looks just completely different from anything else at the time. It's not cell shading. It doesn't really look like a comic book panel, but it's also not, you know, just this flat 3D image. Giving it this cartoony shading, again, makes it look like an actual animated cartoon, but also just makes it extremely distinct from anything else around the time period. I love Jak and Daxter. Ratchet and Clank is fun. They don't look, I don't think they look as good as this. I'm sure there's something to be said about it, but again, the shading on the characters, the whole art design of this game really allows for it to shine nearly 20 years later. Going into this area, again, this is the Tide of Terror, where we're going to face off against Raleigh the Bullfrog, the first member of the Fiendish Five. This area introduces a mechanic, which we'll see throughout the game, that allows us to progress in the form of keys. Keys are needed to progress to the next area. They unlock doors or other weird ways to progress throughout the area. After you finish a level, let me back up a little bit. So every chapter is divided into smaller levels, each of them with their own theme, kind of like, you know, Mario, Donkey Kong, any other type of platformer. Tide of Terror is based around pirates. So you have submarines, you have broken up airplanes, whatnot, that have been destroyed in this Welsh triangle. At the end of every level, you will receive a key, and that key ultimately goes towards unlocking the next area and then eventually the boss fight. It kind of reminds me of a less tedious Unfreezing the Dragons from the original Spyro game. I'm sure there are other examples that, you know, people could think of, but that's kind of what first came to mind for me. Progression is a lot behind this, but it's fun because you can kind of tackle every level in whatever order you want. I'll kind of let the rest of the group discuss maybe their order, what you thought about the area.
Can I comment on like the progression like system?
Yeah, go ahead.
So at first, so you get there and then they're like, oh, we need to go through these like levels to get 3 keys to unlock the next area. And I was like, oh, okay. So I went and I did 3 levels, and then I got the keys. I was on my way to go unlock the next area, and I stumbled across another level. And I was like, oh, there's like bonus levels. There's like secret levels. There's 4. You have to beat 3 of them. And so I was like, well, I'm gonna beat it anyway. And I did. Went ahead. We get to the next area. They're like, all right, now you need 4 more keys. And it turns out that you actually just have to beat all the levels in that particular area. So it is really cool that they let you do it in whatever order that you want. But for whatever reason, it's less cool to me than if they had just had like more levels than you actually had to complete to beat the game.
I get that, and that's kind of what Spyro did. I'm not trying to make this a Spyro discussion,
That's
but
good.
that's
I
kind of
haven't played
why.
Spyro.
So I appreciate Sly Cooper for having the bare minimum amount, because I'm not necessarily, hey, he's back.
I did it.
Hey.
You did it. You
That's
win.
what that 4 years at college did for you.
Yeah.
So
Thankfulness.
with something like Spyro, you can play, maybe 3 levels out of the 5 required in the world. But if you get enough dragons, whatever it may be, it might be enough to progress to the next world. And I respect that, but it's extremely, extremely tedious, because if you want to 100% the game, get all the collectibles, whatever it may be, it takes forever. Whereas Sly Cooper, every level is required to move on to the next area, but you can tackle them in whatever order you want. And the extras aren't just collecting coins that'll ultimately give you, at the end of the game, you'll have 15,000 coins or whatever, and they'll say, good job, you did it. This game allows you to collect messages in a bottle. You collect enough of them, you can unlock a safe in every level, which will ultimately teach you a new skill. And they all fit that into the game's lore by these safes being a page of the Thievius Raccoonus.
What? That's what's in those safes?
Yes.
I also want to say something on that.
Yeah, go, John.
So wait, hold on. Hold on. Did you not open a single safe?
I did not open a single safe. I would
Okay.
get
Boy.
to the end of the level and I would have like 29 out of 30, and I would like look behind me and I just go, nope, and then I would just beat the level.
So that's what happened to me in the first main area we went to. And then, not to jump ahead, but the second area is where I ended up completing one of them just to see what was in the safe. And then it gave me an ability, and I was like, well, I've missed out on a few of these already. I'm not going back for them.
What are the abilities?
Anyway. So it depends on
Literally
what
gives
you
you new
open.
moves.
Yeah.
But like what? Like just like more attack power, or like a higher double jump? Like what?
Okay. For example, I have one that allows me to do a roll like from Dark Souls. So you press the button and you'll roll.
I've been using the roll to move across levels faster. You just hold it down and you just keep rolling.
There's a really big variety. So two of my favorites are slow down and speed up. So the slow down, it can only be applied in air, but let's say I'm jumping from a platform and I need to hit a really small space. If I hit triangle, it will slow down my fall speed to like a third, and I can use it to like more accurately control where I'm going. And then there's the speed up, which allows me it speeds up everything in the game, not just yourself. But a lot of times, if I'm trying to go back through a level and collect all of the bottles, if I miss one, I can hold that triangle for the speed up, and allows me to zoom through a level extremely fast without having to worry about, oh, this is so tedious, I don't want to do this again.
Yeah. So after I realized that they had extra moves in them, I collected the final 3 from the last 3 levels I had.
I started collecting them as soon as I realized that they had actual moves in them. Like the first one I got is like a dive move that also damages people, and it's just such a good way to hit people from like a distance.
That would have been very helpful to me had I known that was a thing. I might go back and go get them all now, just because I know they'll help me now.
I honestly thought about going back and getting them all.
I'm so upset. Okay. So to me, these collectible like hints in a bottle are worse than the I was talking about earlier how I thought it would be cool if all of the levels weren't required, and it made it seem that way, but then it just turns out they all are required. This is like a worse version of that, where if you miss one, it's over. It doesn't matter. Replay the entire level. Like,
yeah,
get better at the game. I don't mind that. I don't mind like making you go out of your way to like get collectibles. But if there's actually, if they're collectibles for collectibles' sake, whatever. But if they're collectibles that actually help you learn abilities that are beneficial to your progression and enjoyment of the game, then there should be a surplus amount, in my opinion, so that missing one isn't like a death sentence. That's like, oh well, try again.
So yeah, I can agree with that in half of what you said. I did not like the fact that I had to, in some cases, end my life prematurely just to go back and get some, because some points of these levels you can't go back to earlier stages. You actually have to end your character's life and go backwards just to go back and get one of those, just because you happen to not see it.
Yeah,
But
it would
I
be
mean,
nice if they
that's
let
just
you
par
like.
for the course on that kind of level design, I would say.
It would be nice if they let you warp between the checkpoints.
I do agree with that.
I'm sure that's like a loading issue with the PS2, but that would be convenient, and that would kind of mitigate my frustration because you wouldn't have to just start completely over.
So I would like to agree with you, but I got every single bottle, like in every single level, and I probably played a total of 4 hours. So it wasn't extremely tedious, and I don't think not having them would have diminished my enjoyment of the game. So I think they added something, but since I didn't lose anything if I wasn't using the abilities, I don't think there's really a problem with that. And also, they actually so each of the saves gives you a ability, or in the case of 1 or 2, they actually allow you to see every breakable object and bottle in an area. So if you collect all the bottles for that one safe, you can pull out your binoculars and it'll show you, hey, look, there's 4 bottles right here that are hidden beyond. So it makes it a lot easier to go about it. And during that time, I only had to replay 2 levels. And if you replay the level, you actually keep all of your bottles.
Yeah, that is nice.
So there's only one level that it felt tedious. There's a level where you have to crawl into a barrel and sneak around in it. And that was a little tedious just because I had to go back to the beginning and crawl through in a barrel the entire time. And it's really slow going, and it's because I missed like 1 bottle. But again, if you have the ability that shows you where they're at, it's not too bad. And even then, I timed it at one point because I had to go back from the beginning of the level all the way through the end. And the levels are linear if you want them to be linear. And once you know them, it took me a minute and a half to run through. That's including stopping to go get the bottle, like find the bottle. Yeah. So if they were any longer, it would be frustrating. I love playing. I know you guys will all roll your eyes at this, The Witcher. But it's really frustrating because if you miss something on a playthrough of a game that, big, of that scale, and you have to replay it, you're not talking about a minute and a half, it's 20, 30 hours, maybe 100 hours total of gameplay to get back to that point, which is ridiculous if you want to platinum a game, but this makes it very accessible. So I didn't really have any issues with the bottles.
Well, I'm mad, so.
And that's
mad.
fair.
Get glad.
Going forward. So
not an ad, could be an ad.
Exact copyright strike.
So as far as the progression, like I said, so we use these keys to progress to the next area. In each of the areas that we play in, mechanically, there's these padlocks that prevent you from moving forward, but they're kind of reskinned in different ways that fit the tone or the setting of the world. And so Raleigh the Bullfrog is a machinist. He's a mechanical genius. And so the first little, I guess, barrier is a generator that you have to unlock the door to and then destroy it. After that, you need to get, I think it's either 7 or 8 keys, and you unlock a cannon, which will then shoot you to his lair. I think that's really cool. It's a really simple thing, but again, the way it's reskinned to fit the boss and their lair, their layout, setting, whatever you want to call it, it's just a neat little thing that adds that extra layer of detail to the game.
I just wanted to, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I just want to talk about how this part of the game is just Wind Waker, because you're sneaking around an enemy's lair in a barrel. and then they launch you into the enemy's attempt to launch you into the enemy's stronghold. And this is just Wind Waker. Maybe we'll play that one eventually, but I just had to comment on that. I'm
So when did
sorry,
they come
Ryder.
out? They came out like the same year, didn't they?
Wind Waker was 2001. So
2002.
2002. But what?
Yeah, these came out the same year.
What
Sly
month?
Cooper came out like 3 months earlier.
Ah, so Wind Waker copied Sly Cooper.
Sure did.
Wind Waker is Sly Cooper.
In those 3 months, they
Wow.
developed that part of the game.
Facts.
Oh, I was wrong.
So guys, we're already talking about how we got to the first boss. So I guess at this point we need to ask, what was your favorite level out of those that the 7 we got to choose from? That was something I was interested to know. So I guess I can go first before I
Yeah, you go
just
first. This is your
throw that
question.
out to the room.
Should have taken notes.
You could just make something up. Nobody's gonna fact check you.
I'm googling the levels right now.
Except for Ryder. So my favorite out of those 7 was the submarine crab level. It was the only level I got through the first try, and
The twin stick shooter level.
yes, it's my favorite out of them, just because I got it done the first try, and I felt very proud of myself because those crabs nearly stole those treasure chests. So you cannot let a single treasure chest be stolen by a crab, because they all keep coming out of these pipes underground and trying to steal 40 treasure chests from you, and they periodically fall to the bottom of the ocean while you're shooting the crabs to keep them from stealing the chests. So I would say that one's my favorite out of those 7. So, all right,
So-
Kurt looks like he's ready. So
No,
Or-
Ryder,
Before
you
we
go
go
ahead.
Ryder.
too far,
Yeah, you
so
can talk
before we
about
go
that.
too far into our favorites, I wanted to actually bring this up. So thank you for doing it, John. I'd forgotten. So typically the progression of the game is a fairly linear level. It's really, however, it's as linear as you want it to be. You can explore, get the bottles, get some extra coins or whatnot, or you can just kind of run straight through the level and try to get to the end. And you'll get your key at the end, which will allow you to progress. But there's the occasional level inside of each of these world chapters that is really a minigame level, and you'll unlock a key at the end. This is one of those.
The only good one in the first half.
Maybe.
Maybe.
So I just want to throw out, I really like this idea because it kind of spices it up. As much
For
as
sure.
I love playing as Sly, it's not a very long game, but it's just long enough that I could get bored if there was nothing other than just playing as Sly. So these mini games help change up the formula a little bit because, again, I was choosing to do this, but going and searching for every single bottle was getting a little tiring. But then I had a mini game to kind of break up the monotony in the middle, where I didn't have to worry about going and finding 30 or 40 bottles to unlock a safe at the end, because I was just destroying crabs as a little submarine gun thing. Did you guys enjoy the mini games?
I liked that one.
I guess.
yeah, the
Kurt,
first one was
okay.
good.
Yeah. I really
Is
like
that the
that one.
consensus? Okay. So we'll discuss the others when that time comes, but just want to throw that out. It's a nice little detail. And since I'm talking, I'll go ahead. The crab at the time was my least favorite, the crab mini game level, just because it goes on for
as a
so
kid?
long.
Or the replay?
No, as an adult.
Oh, okay.
So when I played it earlier, yesterday, the day before, I was caught between enjoying it and being just very frustrated because it just seemed like, oh my gosh, it keeps on going. Where are these crabs coming from? And especially at the end, there's just waves of crabs coming out, and I'm trying desperately to keep them away from my Lucky Charms. But it was okay. Ultimately, like reflecting on it, it wasn't as bad as I thought. I was just so stressed because I lost one time, and I was like, I don't want to do this again.
Do you actually lose if they take one? Because I was pretty sure they took one of mine and it just kept going. And I was like, oh, okay.
No,
Okay,
definitely lose.
I must have been too awesome and sniped that crab before he actually got away.
And
So
humble
Bentley's
too.
like, if they take one chest, you lose. And
Yeah, that's
he
how I
was not
understood
lying.
it, but okay. Yeah.
My favorite level, though, is probably the conveyor belt level. And this is kind of an example of good game design. So Kurt earlier was discussing how there's only, it looks like there's only 3 levels in the first area of this world. In truth, there's a fourth one that you missed. The fourth one that I missed was up on a tower.
Yeah, same.
I'm assuming it's the same one. So you actually walk over to it, and Bentley says, "Hey, Sly, there's a blah blah blah," and you go over to it, and it's like a little rat wheel. I don't know what else to describe it as, but you run on it, and it will power the generator and allow you to do something depending on the area. So that is explained to you in the overworld, and you go into the level that corresponds with that, and the entire level is made up of those. I enjoyed that mostly because of, it kind of taught you in the overworld, hey, look, if you run on top of this little wheel, it'll power a generator and allow you to do something. And the whole mission was nothing but that. It was pretty straightforward, other than you just had to run on a rat wheel every once in a while. Really straightforward. Conveyor belts would move as you pull it, but I
Is that the
thoroughly
lava
enjoyed
level,
that.
or is that a different one?
Yes, that one's a lava level.
That one was my
Mhm.
least favorite. Yeah.
That one was
See, me and
fine.
you are on like opposite wavelengths right now.
My favorite
can-
one was the high class heist, which is the one where you're going through like his collection, and it's actually the one with the barrel.
Mhm.
Mario 3 is one of my favorite games of all time, and the reason it's so good and the reason it still holds up and is better than Mario World is because they introduce like basically a new mechanic in every level, if not every other level, if not every single level. And then just the whole level is just based on that new mechanic. And so like you were talking about with the like spinny hamster wheel thing, like that was that level's mechanic, and this one was the like sneaky barrel mechanic, and that was I don't know, that was like the first one that jumped out to me. It's like, oh, that's this level's mechanic, and then I started noticing them like throughout the subsequent levels. But that was a good time, and then I also just really liked the aesthetic. I liked all the like terrifying paintings of like animal people on the wall, and there was like a suit of full plate armor, but like for a frog, and that might be the greatest thing that's ever been like thought of, and it made me really happy. It made me really happy. I don't know. I thought it was great. It was just a fun level. It was like interesting. There was challenge to it. I don't know that I would have enjoyed replaying it to try to find all of the bottles, but I don't know. That was my favorite one.
It's too bad he wouldn't fit in that armor anymore. He's gotten fat.
That's true.
I was going to pick the barrel level too.
Hey, Joe, we can
But
be
fine.
You can share
best
favorite
friends.
levels.
But I did also want to point out Into the Machine,
Yes.
where you're like going through the factory setting, there were parts where there would be like flames that would like pop out underneath a bunch of vents.
Mhm.
And you had this jump attack move that just happened to be swinging your cane down. And it just happened to go in the same way that it would like knock the vents down and close the fire. And I thought that was like a really neat mechanic. But also the barrel thing I was really enjoying that because it was just like a break from running around hitting people and climbing on stuff. I thought it was really clever use of how they would like the little globes that acted as like dart security systems. I thought it was really clever how the barrel would protect you from those.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I really like the the barrel level was a little slow for me. Overall, I liked it though. It was a bit more tedious than some of the others, but I really liked the level with the fire vents, flame vents, whatever. They reused that mechanic later on throughout, but it was really fun getting to do that. Like the first time, it was really satisfying jumping up and pulling down with your cane and watching the hook like close the vent for you. Moving on from this, once we finish this level, get all of our the world that is, get all of your keys, move on to the cannon. I don't really know what else to describe it as other than it's kind of the last gateway to the final level, which is the boss battle. Use all of your keys, unlock this cannon, and it blasts you over to Raleigh the Bullfrog's dungeon. There's actually his airship. So the boss fight begins. We have a shortcut scene against with Raleigh where we kind of, yell at each other. You killed my dad, prepare to die, and you go Montoya stuff, and we go from there. Starting with everyone's thoughts on this boss fight in general, any frustrations, how much you enjoyed it, that kind of stuff. And I think we'll start with Joseph on this.
I haven't really liked the bosses in this game very much, to be perfectly honest. I think they're clever. I think they look cute, but I thought it was fairly repetitive. I think you hit the boss like 4 times, and each segment, or the first 3 times, he does the same thing, and then the 4th time he does something different. This also goes back to something that I haven't mentioned earlier, or something I haven't mentioned at all, was you only get 1 hit in the game unless you collect enough coins to get another horseshoe, or unless you find another horseshoe. And if you get hit once in a boss fight, it just kills you and starts you over. But the boss, he'll blow up and he'll start bouncing around like 5 times, and then you hit him once, then he jumps back, blows up again, and he does the same thing over and over again. And the first time I tried to hit him, I think I hit him a little bit too early, so my cane just popped off of him, and it gave me the instinct of like, oh, I must not hit him whenever he like deflates. But I tried it again because there wasn't anything else I could do, and then it actually hit and it took damage. But I thought it was just a little bit repetitive.
For anyone who's not playing the game, just a quick explanation as far as gameplay. We didn't really talk about this earlier. There are magnets or horseshoes.
Lucky
I guess horseshoe
charms,
is what it is. Lucky charm, which would I guess be a horseshoe. As a kid, I always thought they were magnets, but it's a horseshoe. It kind of latches onto Sly's back. It gives him another hit before he dies. It's kind of like the mask from the
Crash
Bandicoot games, or Sparks from Spyro. It doesn't change gameplay at all, but it's really just another hit before you die.
I think the problem, though, in my opinion, with that is that, in like Crash Bandicoot, there'll be boxes just like intermittently that have the mask in them that you can pick up, or in like say Mario, the 2D Mario games, you die in 1 hit unless you have a power up, but there are power ups everywhere. But in this game, I think there's maybe 1 lucky charm like in every level, if that. I've only found 1 in a few levels, and then the only other way to get it is to get 100 coins, which is not, it's not hard, but it takes a while. So if you get hit, you're just kind of out of luck and you just have to like be perfect. And I think it can be incredibly frustrating when a game expects you to be perfect for long periods of time, because the punishment is so like severe when you do mess up, instead of just being like, oh darn, I gotta not do that again.
I do like that they can stack though. So if you collect like over 100 without getting hit, you'll get another extra hit that stacks onto it, which is kind of nice. And they do also do. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, if you get another 100, you get an extra life.
Yeah, and they do also do the thing like the newer 3D Mario games have done, where if you've died like 3 or 4 times in a row, there will be a horseshoe just like laying right in front of you because they feel bad for you.
I'd say that ultimately the game is very gamer friendly. Of course, we talked about this earlier. I did. It is made for children ultimately. So even when there are parts like that where it gets frustrating, maybe you're losing against a boss, certain enemies over and over again, the game's like, here, I'm going to kind of prod you in the right direction. Here's a horseshoe, lucky charm to help you along the way. I had a little bit of trouble with this fight specifically because I got greedy a couple of times. Thankfully, though, because I had to go back so many times for the bottles, I went over and over. I ended up having like 17 lives by the time I hit this, so I didn't have to worry about gaming over or anything. But I enjoyed this boss fight for the most part. There's 4 phases in this boss fight. The first one, you're trying to avoid Raleigh the Frog while he tries to squash you. He's just kind of jumping back and forth, and pretty much wherever you're standing about a half a second before he jumps is where he's going to land. Pretty straightforward, and it gets more complex the further along you go. I personally liked how simple it was. It was never anything that was extremely frustrating for me, but it required just enough attention for me to like pick up, okay, this is what's going to happen next. I want to say kind of like, old Mario bosses where you go into like the second or third phase where it's not a huge change up, but just enough to kind of switch up what you're expecting. Might kill you on your first or second try if you're not really paying attention. I ended up dying probably like...
No, go ahead. I was just going to say, if I can comment on that, like, as far as like changing phases, I want to like applaud the boss design, because it's very clear like what they're going to do. Whenever you hit him the first time, the second time he jumps back to the middle platform, and then every platform but one starts like flashing red, and it's just like immediately like, oh, I should not stand there. and sure enough, they like disappear. And if you were standing in those, you would have died. Which you would have died by falling in water. And I'm sorry, raccoons can swim, and that's very frustrating to have like insta death. Anyway, but I think the bosses are well designed in that they're not just completely random. There's no like BS like with a Castlevania boss that like after you beat it, it has like one last actually no, you're dead attack, even though you felt like it came out of nowhere. I'd say the bosses are well designed.
Mhm.
Did
Yeah,
his
I
last
completely
move
agree.
not feel like that to anybody else? So when you got to his last hit, he jumped down and did a spin laser move. And I got hit by that because that was the first time I saw it.
That one surprised me a little bit,
Same.
but I don't know. I just happened to react to it and then just kept jumping, and I was fine. I probably would have. I feel like you could die to that your first time. That one was not as well choreographed, honestly.
Maybe I'm just bad at video games now.
I mean, I think that's
That's what it
true,
is.
but
Yeah.
that's why
probably
we're
it.
here. Joe, we didn't tell you this.
Yeah.
This is actually just a support group for you for being bad at
Aw.
video games.
This is us
Speaking
just
of me being
roasting
bad
each
at
other.
video games.
It's just us roasting each other and how bad we are at video games. That's all this is.
Speaking of me
Saying?
being bad at video games, did anybody get a game over yet?
Maybe
Yes.
one.
Because it doesn't do
one
anything.
or two.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
did.
it doesn't do anything.
I was
It doesn't
really
do anything
worried.
at all.
I was really worried that like if you died, you would like. At first, I thought you would have to restart the whole area, and then I realized like all the areas are way too big; they wouldn't make you do that. Then I thought you'd have to restart the whole level, but doesn't it just take you back to the last checkpoint?
No, you have to
Yeah.
start the levels over.
Okay. I've
Yeah.
only gotten a
But-
game over at a boss fight, so the boss fight
Yeah.
just restarted.
Anywhere else, you just that beginning area. Whenever you get into the game, when you leave the van, if you don't make it to the area with the levels, you do have to do that whole section over,
Okay.
like it were a level. So
Mhm.
So the game overs are very forgiving. I game over one time, and they're like, "Here's 5 extra lives. And you're going to start right where you left off from." And so
I actually do
I was
that on
really worried
purpose.
about it. Yeah, exactly. Well, I was thinking, I was like, well, I mean, there's no real downside to dying other than, I mean, I guess you lose your coins if you
Yeah.
had those saved up. But I mean,
So I
those are
did that
so
on
easy to
purpose,
collect.
actually. So if I never made it to the first checkpoint of an area, I would actually just drop down to 0 so I could have 5 again, because I'm not making it to the checkpoint with 1 life or no lives left,
Mhm.
and then I have to start the whole thing over when I could just, end it one more time and then I get 5 more tries.
But the
Yeah.
lives in the overworld do respawn, which I exploited the heck out of before I
I did too.
realized that there was no consequences to gaming over. I had like 13 or 14 lives before the first boss fight.
I noticed that
Yeah,
lives
same.
respawn after I got shot out of the cannon to the boss. Because there's 1 life that shows up in that cutscene, and I was like, oh, I could have got that again.
So moving on from here, once you finish your 4 phases against Raleigh, and give him the good beat down, he tells you through something that's definitely not exposition that you will never beat the next member of the Fiendish Five, whose name is Mugshot and who is living in Mesa City, Utah.
Yeah, his
You will
villainous
never beat him.
cohort in Utah.
Villainous cohort, yeah.
Is the quote.
And
Give away
I
his
love
location.
this because they didn't do this with Mugshot, but I'd actually go look it up after just to make sure. But he croaks Raleigh the Bullfrog. And our boss in the next area doesn't really do anything like that. But I thought, I was like, oh my gosh, is he dead? And I went and looked it up, and he's not. And of course, like I looked it
Aw.
up before they even showed the cutscene.
Yeah.
But the cutscene shows Carmelita shows up and arrests him.
Yeah.
Carmelita and Interpol, I'm just calling them that because that's just kind of what I think they are. The international police show up, they arrest Raleigh. They're actually looking for Sly, end up finding Raleigh knocked out instead. So they take him prisoner. Of course, he's going to be tried for being an evil frog who's sinking ships. One thing that I really loved about this, I don't know if anyone else noticed, but Carmelita Fox is, of course, a fox, and she's the detective that's trying to stop Sly. And the regular run-of-the-mill police are actually pigs.
I didn't catch
I don't know if
that.
anyone noticed that.
Didn't notice that.
But it's very fitting.
did
It's
not.
very fitting.
Goodness.
It was really funny. So moving on from there, we end up going to Mesa City, which is in the United States, in Utah, and it's essentially a Las Vegas-ish, Western boomtown out in the middle of the desert. So here our area begins. This chapter is called Sunset Snake Eyes. And again, we get this really beautiful cartoony logo. Again, it looks like the intro to a Saturday morning cartoon. And this is our episode intro picture. As far as this, we start away from the city and start making our way inward. Mechanically, nothing really new introduced here that I can think of. So I just want to go ahead and get into the real, meat of it. John, do you want to start off with kind of initial thoughts about this area?
So initial thoughts of this area, all different kinds of enemies we get to encounter. So all of our enemies in this area are canines or dogs. So it's nice to see the swap up of the different enemies based on the area. So and then as Kurt has mentioned previously, we get our new mechanic of jumping on mattresses to get over fallen over cars, and then just trying to learn this area and understand the different mechanics that are going on here. So we got new traps that are based on the ground. So we now have lasers on the ground that we have to avoid, as well as our original lights that are going to be finding us, and then new mechanics of enemies with lights and machine guns. So it's a very exciting area, definitely a lot more difficult, but definitely giving that ramp up that this game really wanted to throw at us. So it's exciting to see that progression on that regard.
So thank you for hitting all that, because those are actually things that I almost completely forgot. I don't want to go too deep into my thoughts on it, but you're talking about some of these new mechanics. Yeah, there's essentially sensors on the floor now that will register if you step on them and shock you if you step on them again after you've been triggered. So from here, the game, I think, ramps up in difficulty. It doesn't become hard, but there is a noticeable increase in difficulty from this point going forward. I think the best example of this kind of ramped up difficulty is definitely there's guards that now patrol with flashlight, but have a machine gun. Previous area, there were also enemies that patrolled with flashlights, but they had a single projectile that they would throw or spit. And there's still some of those enemies that have now been reskinned. But these are the first enemies that we've seen that have like a continuous attack.
You're talking about the Rottweilers?
Yes.
Those are these are my favorite characters in the game right now, because they shoot at you, and then whether or not they hit you, they like celebrate by howling and like firing bullets randomly into the air, and it's the best thing that's ever happened. So if I ever
turn in the South,
if I ever turn into a werewolf, somebody hand me an automatic weapon, please. Thank you.
So they're really cute, and like I love the way that they walk. They annoy me because they're so much harder to get around and to kill than previous enemies, but they walk like this, and it's really cute watching them like take every step.
They have better posture than I do.
And me. And on the subject of John was talking about, there's these new dogs that are introduced. There's some new enemies like this Rottweiler that patrols the flashlight and the Tommy gun. But there's also some enemies that have just been reskinned, and
like what?
I really appreciate the way it's not reskinned, but kind of reworked and reskinned. So in the previous area, we had I guess sea lions, or what most of those enemies were in the previous area.
Well, they were beavers.
Maybe seals. I assume they were some type of ocean aquatic animal. Who knows? Maybe they're just like big dogs.
Like beavers.
Yeah, like beavers. I don't think they're beavers, but we'll say that the beaver seals. But there was one that threw like a ninja star at you, which was actually just a starfish, and that was cute and goofy. And they introduced in this area a similar enemy
with cards,
but it's a hound dog, that throws a deck of cards. So he
Dalmatian.
Is it Dalmatian?
Oh, he's spotted. Okay. He could be just any spotted dog, I suppose.
He is hound dog.
He's a mutt. It's fine.
Oh yeah,
he's a
got
dog with
too, just like Dalmatian,
just like Goofy. But anyways, he flips out his deck of cards and throws them at you like the Joker. And it's not exactly a reskin, but it's similar mechanics that have been expanded to make it more difficult. But they could just go with a very simple reskin or copy and pasting enemies. But this game is showing us early on the second world, we're not going to do that. It's a really simple detail, but it makes it more difficult. It also makes it so nice to look at because even though this is like a rundown desert area, it all fits this aesthetic so well. It's a city ran by dogs, which also just makes me think of there are bulldogs on chains, and it's just interesting because it's like I guess maybe those are like gorillas in the zoo for us
No,
because
don't
like,
go down the don't do the goofy Pluto thing. Don't go down that hole.
don't do
wasn't.
what?
Don't go down
wasn't.
that hole. Don't go down the goofy Pluto hole. It's
No,
not worth it.
But
I had
it's
something
just-
else,
it's
but I'm not going to bring
interesting.
that up.
That's a good idea,
But-
probably.
It is a good idea.
It's just funny because we have the guys with the machine guns and the cars, and we also have like the chain chomp enemies, which are the bulldogs.
Yeah.
And I thoroughly enjoy it, but the first one I just kind of whacked him with my cane and kept walking, and I was like, wait a minute, why are you stuck here like this? But anyways, going back to this area, John kind of gave his thoughts on what he's seen in this new area. How about you, Kurt? What do you think about this new area? Just first opinions on it.
I like it. Like I was saying earlier, I really like how like everywhere has a unique aesthetic, and I really like this one's aesthetic. There's like power lines everywhere that you crawl across, and then there's cars that are like halfway tipped over the edge of a cliff, and if you step on them, it actually like teeters back and forth. And again, I just want to comment on how amazing the Tommy gun Rottweiler is. It's too good. But yeah, no, I really like the aesthetics of this level, and it was still barren, but it was less like gloomy than the last one. The last one was still interesting, but this one felt more like vibrant, especially when you get into like the casino-y stuff later.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Joe?
Something I did want to point out was I could mention this earlier in the previous world, but the character designs of the main characters like are drawn to pop out against all the different backgrounds and everything. Like Sly is like a really vibrant blue, and Bentley is like a vibrant green, and everything else is a little bit murky, not like depressing, but it's so that the main characters and the enemies will pop out more, and I really like that. And also the teetering car things, I didn't notice this the first time I did it, but whenever you jump on a car and then like jump back away and walk away, you'll hear a crashing sound and somebody screaming in the distance. If you turn around and look, the cars will be gone. But I really like the whole like Spike from Tom and Jerry thing too, with the dogs that are on the chains, and you can just stand just outside their reach, and they'll like come and like bark at you and then get pulled back.
Yeah, that's
I
just
think
our high school mascot at this point, Ryder.
Yeah,
it's just very much clip art bulldog.
Yeah, they just drag it in and click the make 3D button, and there you go. It's done.
The make 3D
that easy. But yeah, I really like this area.
Very easy.
Like a classic World 2 desert area, at least to start off with.
Oh, that's
I
cool.
didn't even think of that.
Yeah, that
is.
works.
Yeah.
It's accurate.
So we've already done the water world, thankfully, so we don't have to do that again.
Sure.
Wait a minute. That's not true. There's a water world on this one.
Which one's water?
Yeah, one of the casino levels is flooded. I was
Oh,
like, wait a
yeah,
minute.
you're
Am I
right.
back?
Yeah.
Am I back in the frog area? I did think
Yeah,
about
that level was not great, but it's okay.
So before we get to that, I want to talk real quick about, so we discussed earlier, we have keys that kind of divide the level into two halves. One keeps you from progressing to the next area, and then the next set of keys keeps you from progressing to the boss. So you typically need 3 keys to progress to the second half of the world. In this first half of the world, we're outside, and this is where most of the desert rooftop parts or levels take place. I'll start with the rooftop levels. I think this is a good way to divide it. What did you guys think of those? There's one where we have a Carmelita Fox showdown, which is very interesting to me because we get a narrative kind of window in this level. A lot of the previous levels were fairly straightforward, go to the end, get the key. But this one actually had some moments between Carmelita and Sly, which I think is very interesting. Anyone want to talk about that to begin with?
I got you. So that was actually my favorite level out of the second second part of this that we did. Again, back to Crash Bandicoot. I don't know why, but this level particularly just reminded me of the boulder levels of Crash Bandicoot, trying to outrun the electrical bullets that were being shot at you while also trying to collect all these bottles and jump through the level. So I don't know why, but it had a likening. It had a likening to that, and I did enjoy that. So that was why that one was my favorite out of those. And that is actually the first level that I collected all of the bottles from. And made me realize I should be doing that on all of them. So, and I did like, again, they're consistent with their banter. So it's a nice little back and forth, but at like a children's level, that's like, haha, that's funny. They're fighting each other, but you can tell they like each other, type thing.
I agree that it is a cool level. Overall positive vibes from it, but I got very frustrated with the camera at points, especially because the camera is inverted to what I'm used to, which I think
meant to bring that up earlier.
I'm used to inverted, so I'm not used to it. So every time I want to move the camera, it goes the opposite direction, and then I like panic. And so there's parts where it's kind of like the boulder level in Crash, where she's behind you and the camera's pointed behind you, and you're sort of running diagonally towards the screen, like towards the camera, which makes it really hard to see where you're going. So I would like try to turn the camera around, and it would always autocorrect to back. And so I thought that was a little frustrating. But again, that's just kind of the game being old. The way cameras work now is different. So that's not so much the game not being designed well. It's just sort of that particular thing hasn't aged particularly gracefully.
Yeah, those inverted controls. The first thing I tried to do was go into settings and change it.
Nope.
You can't do that, but only for 3 different things you can change the inverting. That's it. So anyway,
I've been dealing with camera issues the whole time too.
Tangent over. Go ahead.
I was saying I've been dealing with camera issues the whole time too, with the same inversion problem. So the first thing I did was try and invert the camera. It do not be that way.
So what did you think about the level itself though, Joseph?
Oh, I loved it. I thought it was really fun. It was just like being chased by Carmelita and her like shooting and destroying everything in your path and behind you. I thought it was really fun. But I was also like, I felt like it wasn't too much of a challenge at a certain point because she was always shooting like right behind you, it seemed like. Because you're always constantly moving. I guess she's trying to shoot where you're currently standing, which ends up being behind you the whole time. But I would just
stop moving.
Yeah, there were times where I did that. I just forgot that she was chasing me, and then I would get shot and have to go back to the previous checkpoint. But I think that was my favorite level in this area too, next to one of the casino levels too.
So I thoroughly enjoy this level as well. The 3 rooftop levels are 3 of my favorite. There's this one, which I think is really good. I'm gonna kind of speed run through the others. I think this one was the most popular. So if anyone wants to stop on the others, let me know for sure. Go ahead. Yeah.
My favorite level was the back alley. I forgot what the last word was. Back alley
hopping
something.
on like the air conditioners and stuff.
Yeah, you're bouncing around. It's very vertical. I love games that are like have bouncy elements, and so you're jumping on like the what are they called? They give shade to the outside of buildings. Anybody got the word for that?
It's like an awning, but
it's like an awning. Yeah, it's like a really bouncy awning. I like those going up, like bouncing up the sides of buildings, jumping down. I will say though, I got almost all the bottles on this one, but at the very end, you jump off of a building and bounce on the elevators down, and I missed one at the very top, and I couldn't easily just grab it. So I was like, oh well, there's probably nothing important in these safes, and so I just like moved on without it. So now I'm like even more frustrated that level was like I almost had it and I still didn't.
You talking about the air conditioners? At the very end? You talking about the air conditioners you had to jump on at the very end and then you went down a building? Yeah, that was the second level that I was determined to get all the bottles in. And I actually jumped off the sides to go back to the checkpoint to get them because it took me, I had 4 lives. I took 3 of them just to retry that to get that very top one so I could unlock the safe. So I nearly had to restart the whole level over because I wanted 1 bottle.
That level was the first time that I purposely jumped off the side to go back and get a bottle that I missed.
I got to where the key was and I tried to jump to a previous part of the level, but there was like an invisible wall that wouldn't let me jump down. And so I was like, oh well. And then I just got the key.
This guy would have a lot less trouble if he just carried around a grappling hook.
That has to be like in later games, right? Or like you can't tell me that he doesn't get a grappling
Maybe.
hook.
He's a
I
thief.
don't remember. I
And
don't
then-
want to spoil anything in case you guys want to play later games.
And then I have another level I wanted to discuss.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the other level was the second mini game, was the racing mechanic game where you're the hippo. I can't remember his name. What's his name? Murray. Yeah, not Bradley. Murray.
Bradley.
Bradley.
Bradley the hippo.
I'm gonna remember that now.
All right. So yeah, so it took me a few tries to get first place in that. But the reason I wanted to bring this up is not because of anything in that level, but at the end of the level. So you take over as Murray and do this race because he went to go get a hot dog from the hot dog stand and they forced him to do a race. So Sly Cooper is just sitting on a cliff, just watching this go down the whole time, and then giving his constructive criticisms if you don't get first place. And then at the end of the race, Murray goes up a hill to the hot dog stand, where if you're first, that's where you go apparently. And then just sitting on the ground is the key. And it just bothered me the fact that Sly Cooper could have just ran in there and grabbed the key while the race was going on. But he's like, you know what? I'm going to let this guy try it 8 times before he gets first place. I thought it was funny, but I just wanted to bring it up because I laughed and I was sad at the same time.
I get that. I was sad. I really hated it at first, and then once I won it, I was like, "Oh, that was pretty fun. I love
Yeah.
that. I was so good at that."
It was
But
good,
having to
it was just a
redo it
little
2 or 3
too
times
hard.
was
Yeah, I had a hard time with it.
I did too. That was the hardest level for me.
It controlled unreasonably well for a driving mini game in a 3D platformer.
Yeah.
But the enemy AI was just like they were too fast and too good. So you had to like really get good at the mini game to actually win.
Well, see, there's the little nitro boost, which are pretty much necessary to win the mini game.
Yeah, that's
And
required.
Yeah, and it's a race, so they're not set on a track. They're on a track, of course, but these AI move differently depending on who's in what place. If you're in second place, then they're going to respond differently to you. They're going to drive differently, more erratically, maybe. And so the enemies can also hit the nitro boost, and if they hit that, they can't use it, but that
It just takes it
breaks
away.
the
Takes it
bottle,
from you.
and now you can't use it. And
Yeah.
if you get unlucky, like I got unlucky one time, and I had a guy hit it 5 times in a row, and it was
Jeez.
like I was in second place watching him go like models, and I was like progressively getting further and further behind because I just couldn't keep up. And so there's some points like that where it's kind of frustrating, where you can do everything right and you can't win. And so I think it took me 3 or 4 tries before I finally did it. Overall, it was a pretty good mini game. I remember as a
Yeah.
kid, this was the one mini game that I could not do. I remember I did everything else in the game, and I remember handing over the controller to my mom, and being like, "Please,
Aw.
please do this," because it was
Hold on,
just
did
too
mom
hard.
get it?
She did. She did it.
I think
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
I love my mom, but I don't think she could hold a controller if we're being honest.
Mm.
My mom loves Sly Cooper. I
I
think
don't want to
that
play your
I took
Nintendo.
over her save at one point, so
That is
I
actually something she would say.
apologize.
It
Um,
happens. It's unfortunate, but it happens, Ryder. Did anybody see
Oh.
the hot dog face?
No, I didn't see Hot Dog Face. Oh yes, yes.
Whenever you like load into the game, it's like it pans over like the race course, and there's a giant hot dog statue, and at the top of the hot dog, there's just a person's face, like literally a photo of someone that they just like stuck onto the texture. And
I assumed it was like a CEO of Sony or like an employee with
I looked
like
it up. It was an employee of
Sucker
Sucker
Punch.
Punch, yeah, who were the ones who
Okay.
made this game. Also, those are the
Bob
Ghost of
from
Tsushima
accounting.
developers, and that's like it's just kind of wild charting their progress from Sly Cooper to Ghost of Tsushima. Like
They're like, we believe in third person action games.
stealth.
Yeah. So John kind of touched on the subject. So that's the first mini game. The second mini game is one that we kind of discussed earlier. Kurt brought it up. This is where Murray being a burden, that's what Sly refers to him as, really comes in. This mini game, I think I beat it on my second try. It wasn't terribly hard for me, but essentially Murray is running across a platform in front of you doing zigzags, and you have to shoot enemies to prevent them from attacking him. If they come up in front of Murray, Murray will cower and try to run away. If you're not fast enough in shooting the enemies from a distance, you'll lose and have to restart. I think the only reason I had to actually restart is because I accidentally shot Murray. Murray died, and so I had to restart as a result of that.
Spent the life to figure out if you could do that.
Yeah, I got mad about that actually, because I was like, what did you get hit by? And I was like, oh, wait, you got hit by me.
So since you guys look like you've had a worse time with it than I did, we'll start with Joseph, because I didn't see any hands go up, any fingers go up. So how was your experience with this, Joseph?
I think I didn't realize I was losing lives until I was like 8 lives down or so, and it asked me if I wanted to continue, and I was like, oh, there are game overs in this game. I just didn't realize that. I thought it was just like reloading the checkpoint without spending lives or anything.
Like the racing game.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think I spent, I don't know, it might have been like 7 or 8 tries on this, because there was definitely one time where I shot him and didn't know what he got hit by. So I shot him again to see if that was what caused it.
Just to make
turns
sure.
Turns out it was. And there were plenty of times where I was, there were a couple of times where I shot the like explosive gas barrels that were near him, but I didn't think were anywhere close enough to do damage to him. It was a little bit tedious, but I feel like most of the time that I was dying on that was definitely my fault.
What the game wants you to think.
Yeah,
I completely disagree. I blame the game and solely the game for all of my problems, because not only, I'm sorry, John, may I?
No, I'm sorry. I thought you were finished. Go ahead.
You're okay. Not only is the y-axis inverted, but the x-axis was inverted. Or am I making that up?
This was one of the controls that you could swap.
Let's say it was, so I can be mad about it. The camera was too hard to control.
You could have fixed 50% of that.
And then the zooming, I'm yelling, I'm sorry.
The zooming was automatic. Yeah.
The zooming was really annoying.
And it was inconsistent, because I believe it would zoom if you like stood still, but then as soon as you moved, it would zoom out really far.
It was zoom if you looked close to Murray.
Is that how it works?
So if you moved away from him, it would zoom out.
See,
but it was really annoying regardless.
I didn't do this enough to even notice.
Yeah, you did on your second try. That's ridiculous. Yeah, it died constantly. And then there's these barrels that if you accidentally shoot the barrel, Murray's like, oh no, the toxic gas has been released 15 feet away from me. I guess I'll die now. And then you start over again. And I liked Murray at the start of this game. All right, I gave him an honest chance. When Sly said he's a full-time burden, I was like, that's really mean. I am so done with Murray. If he ever shows up again, I might just stop playing the game. I was so frustrated. I'm sorry, John, please continue.
So I was just going to agree with what you were saying. Half of my deaths in that were because it was inverted. Up was down and down was up. And I figured out that was one of the 3 options that was in the settings that you could change. And so after that, it only took me 2 or 3 more tries, because as I got to those new areas I hadn't made it to because the controls were inverted, I realized the gas would kill him, and then I needed to know the enemy placement. So after I got rid of the inverted issue, I didn't have that many problems with the minigame. So agreeing with what you said.
Not everybody was smart enough to check the settings, John, okay?
Sorry.
So
when I first booted up the game, I remembered I could do that.
So once we wrapped up this first half of the area, we collect all of our keys. That allows us to move to the second area, which is the casino. I personally really like the way we get into this area. Like I said earlier, each area, the progression is kind of fitting for the setting. So in the first area, there was a generator you had to destroy to get to the second area of the first world. Going a lot of numbers here. Hope you're keeping up. So in the second world here, Sunset Snake Eyes, there is a car out front that is like a convertible, pretty, red gangster car, I guess. Yeah, but specifically all these cars look like, the cars you'd see in like gangster movies from like the 50s and 60s, which is cool. But the car has like a, goodness, what's it called, guys? A boot on it.
Yeah.
And yeah, you can unlock the boot and it will ram through the front door of the casino and bust the casino open. That's just really cool, like little, part of flavor. It's not necessary at all for progression, but it makes it feel fun.
I had no idea what to expect when that boot was going to come off.
Yeah, I didn't know it was a boot. I just saw the keys, and then I was like, I think I need to hit this. And then I hit it, and the car just like teleported into the building. And I was like, oh, great.
Yeah.
So once we get into the casino, we have a few new levels in here. They're all, again, geared towards casino setting, casino theme. I enjoyed most of these, but none of them really stood out to me. I think some of you guys really enjoyed them. Again, I'm going to start with John. I know you discussed one with water, and I'm not sure, was that your favorite one, or did you have another that you preferred more?
So the casino levels, I would say the one that stood out the most was the water level. But I don't know. I guess I could say that one was my favorite. I liked the part where the lasers were just going around the large pool there, and you had to jump across, playing jump rope with those lasers. And I would say that one would be the favorite. And then another level that came to mind, the least favorite, would be the one with the fans that you had to, you're holding onto a rope, walking, or just trying to get your way across these fans that were going across. Just because I was having a lot of troubles. I'm not going to say if it was the game or me on this, but jumping to the next rope or metal apparatus that you hang on to. Sometimes when I'm pressing the button, my character would not hook onto the item and lead me to the next area. So I don't know if that was on my end or what, but that was kind of an issue I had on that. But overall, these levels, I would say, are pretty consistent in their theming, and I did enjoy the different mechanics that were showcased there, as we talked about before, with the different enemies, and getting to see. I know another option was a group of dogs that were holding the machine guns just all in one area. So that was an interesting thing to have to get through there as well. So, but I'll throw that over to somebody else now. Let them talk about their levels on that.
I guess I'll jump in. The casino levels, they felt more samey to me than any of the other levels were. They just all kind of blend together. Like there was one that was flooded, but honestly, you could have just told me that was like the second half of one of the casino levels, because the aesthetic was really similar. The little jump rope laser section stressed me out. Like I thought my heart was going to stop because I really didn't want to fall in the water and die instantly. But then, I made it and it was fine. And then John, to comment on like the traversal, some of the traversal mechanics, like hooking onto like the hooks in the air, and then specifically like grabbing onto things. There's one vertical section, or not vertical, but I guess horizontal section, where you're climbing over some like electrified propellers.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to jump from one pipe or rod or something to another one. And I had to do that like 3 or 4 times, because the first time I did it fine, but then I died and had to restart. And the next 2 or 3 times I would jump and then press circle to grab on, and he just wouldn't grab on. And I don't know, the timing's weird, so maybe it's something I need to like get used to, and it is consistent, but right now it feels inconsistent.
Yeah, ultimately I think I decided I was pressing it too fast. And I think that's what it boiled down to for me. I guess I'm just more acquainted to games that are expecting you to do it a lot quicker. So, but this is an older game, so there's probably more leniency there. So it's expecting you to do it a little bit slower, because again, this is a game geared toward, a younger audience.
I don't think I had as much problems with like pressing circle to grab onto something as I thought I would have, especially with the newer mechanic that was introduced at the beginning of this world, where you press circle to like land on a really precise point on a wire or something. I was really worried I was going to be missing that a lot, but I don't think I ever actually did.
Yeah, that one's pretty precise.
Yeah, I didn't have a problem with that one.
A lot of the I don't know what to call them other than the thief moves.
Jump
grab pretty well. I don't really think I've had much of a problem with them. I might have missed a hook here or there if it was like a moving hook, but most of the time I kind of boil that down to me just not responding at the proper time. But most of the time it'll kind of snap you to it, gravitate towards it. So I haven't really had a huge issue with it.
I kept missing the first hook at the very beginning when they're teaching you how the hooks work. And so I missed it like 5 or 6 times, and then Bentley's like, press circle whenever you jump on the hook. And I'm just like, I know. And then I kept missing. And then he comes back and he's like, press circle, Sly. And I'm like, I know.
So Joseph, you talked a little about the mechanics themselves. What do you think about this second area of the game? Oh, of this world rather, the casino.
Wasn't the second half mostly like rooftop levels, right?
That was really
It's like casino
more
stuff.
in the. Yeah, I think the rooftop stuff was more in the first half. I might be wrong there.
I think
There was a
There was one
vertical
rooftop level. Yeah, there was one rooftop level with like big neon signs. That was like one of the
Okay,
one of the
yes.
last levels.
That one.
So that was actually, because that's on the topic of casino. That was actually one of my favorites, if not my favorite level.
I feel like I spent a lot of time on that level.
Spent a lot of time on that one too.
I felt like I did, but I did enjoy it. There was something about that level that felt like it was just on two rooftops most of the entire time. It was like two signs that were going, or like one big sign that was spread across two rooftops. To me, anyway, it felt like. But I really thought it was kind of cool how you were just like climbing up the neon signs and going up the poles and everything, and then you like traverse over. And once you get towards the end of the level, one of the signs in the middle of the buildings blows up and you can't like cross over to it anymore, which is when I noticed that I'd missed a bottle on the other side of the building.
Same.
So I said, screw that. I'm just going to finish the level. But I did want to point out one smaller thing that I thought was really cool about one of the earlier casino levels, the flooded one that we talked about a lot. I really liked how you were all just on like roulette tables the entire time.
Yeah,
and
that was cool.
At the very end, when you're about to get the key, there's that time where they're definitely intending for you to use the slow time mechanic that I guess Kurt didn't get, because it's spinning around really fast and it wants you to land on that one precise spot. I thought that was really cool.
I nailed it. It was easy. You guys are weak.
I didn't use it. I made it a self-imposed challenge to land on it without using the slow time mechanic.
It's funny, when I landed on the green part the first time, I thought I missed it because it didn't open, and then I realized you had to do it three times.
3 times.
Yeah.
Just like real roulette.
Yep.
Exactly.
So for me personally, the first half of this world I feel like was a lot stronger overall. I remember a lot more of it. But I didn't really care for the flooded level. I liked the roulette table, specifically the roulette table at the end. It was fun mechanic getting to jump on the same or a different spot 3 times. That unlocks it for the key. I also really enjoyed the rooftop level. I liked seeing the neon signs, like that the environment was semi-destructible as you're kind of crossing it. Again, it kind of adds like this whole setting. There's a bit of a narrative there. It's not spoken at any point. But, you know, this is a boom town at one point. When Sly first comes here, he says like, whoa, what happened? You know, he's been here before, or at least knows about it, and knows that there's supposed to be a pretty big population here. But this place is so run down that Sly just sneaking across the neon signs, that collapsing them. So it's a nice little detail there. Once we wrap up this, get all our keys, we again go to the boss area. This time it's not nearly as dramatic. Instead of having a cannon shoot us into the boss area, we collect all the keys, go behind a bar, and it unlocks a bulldog's mouth that opens up and allows us to walk through. And this is where we face Mugshot, who is the boss of Sunset Snake Eyes.
Who has the best walking animation in gaming.
He skipped leg day every day.
Every day.
Yes, so our backstory with him is essentially he was bullied, wanted to get beefed up, so he skipped leg day, and now he can just pummel people with his fists.
He
walks around on his arms. So yeah, he watches a whole bunch of, like, The Dog Father, which I thought was hilarious.
That's really funny.
So this boss, I'm just going to go ahead and hit it. I didn't like it. I died, I think, more to this boss than I did Raleigh. But it was just because, you know, he could shoot you from at a distance, one-shot kill with his weapons. I didn't really care for it. The main thing that you're supposed to do is 3 phases in this boss fight. Each time you're hitting mirrors, will end up causing a crystal to, I guess, burn his guns, melt them away. I felt like they're kind of at a loss for how they wanted you to beat this big muscly dude, and so they're just like, mirrors will melt his guns.
Yeah, I think they had like a mechanical idea, and then they were like, well, that doesn't make sense. And it's like, yeah, but it's mechanically interesting, so just do it.
His guns are made of gummy worms. It's fine.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, maybe so. That would make a little bit more sense. I don't know. I enjoyed the boss design. I like the idea of the crystals, but in execution, it just didn't really work for me. I feel like it's going to be one of those boss fights that I'm probably going to forget right after, I finish the game. I wish I had more to say about it, but it's pretty straightforward. Just turn mirrors around until eventually his guns melt. Did anyone have a better experience than I did? Anyone particularly enjoy it or particularly dislike it?
I didn't like it like at all. I think I died to this boss a lot. And I also feel like they really missed an opportunity by having this giant, huge beefcake dog with his giant arms, and they just gave him guns to walk around and shoot with.
Yeah,
I
only
feel like
use
they could have
range
done
attacks.
something. Yeah, they could have done something way more interesting with his character and how fleshed out they made his backstory.
I agree. I like the idea of that. I mean, he could have grabbed you and yeeted you
Yeah.
across the stage or something, and maybe if you fell off, you lose. Kind of like a wrestling match with him.
Yeah,
I don't know.
they could have done something that made
Um,
more sense than hitting mirrors to melt his weapon and then go up.
Thankfully, he
Yeah,
has
so
another
I
gun
agree.
upstairs. Sorry, John.
yep, you're fine. So yeah, the first time I walked into that boss fight, I died the first time because I think old Tortimer over there, he finally told me that I needed to hit the mirrors. And I honestly didn't know what mirrors he was talking about till I died. And I was like, oh, that mirror. Because if he did not tell me that, I would have never probably finished that boss fight because I thought that was a part of just the background. But after I realized that, it only took me maybe 3 tries, and then only had to do the third phase one time before I beat it because I figured out a great way to do it. And so it was a nice overall, I thought it was a pretty good boss fight. I actually died in that less than the frog fight. So
That's good. I Actually, that's all I have to say about this boss fight. I don't think anyone else particularly enjoyed it. I think we all felt either indifferent or disliked it. So I'm just going to go ahead and move on. Narratively, we end up beating Mugshot, of course, for Sly Cooper. We're going to do that. And he ends up telling us that we need to go and try to beat up Miss Ruby, I believe is her name,
I think so.
who is down in Haiti. So next episode, we're going to Haiti, see what's in store for us there. I don't really think there's anything else really to discuss from this point onward. Pretty much same spiel. Carmelita shows up just too slow, arrests Mugshot, and Sly and the gang get to enjoy a short vacation in the States before heading down to Haiti. That pretty much concludes the first half of Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus. From here, we will be playing through the next chapter of the game to the end of the game. Forgive me, I don't remember the name of this chapter.
It's like voodoo something.
Pretty much just know that we're playing till the end of the game.
Yeah.
So if you want to play along, please do. It's going to be roughly 3 to 4 hours of gameplay. I think it's going to be really fun. From what I remember as a kid, I think the game just gets better from here. I'm personally very excited, and I think I'm probably going to play through the rest of the series after this. Fingers crossed it holds up from here. That's it for this time. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Backlog Crew. Again, we are Press A to Talk. Have a great day.